for this semi-final of Worlds was fucking garbage. I'm talking about both games. This was like I'm not talking about that, by the way, from the perspective of the people casting it. As in, it's not that I'm just like an eternal hater of all of them. I will say it as a disclaimer, I have always thought Freak was very overrated for me. I understand totally why a lot of fans like him and why he has a through line throughout League of Legends history. I get that. So I already will say, on Freak's case, I already to some degree am biased against him because I just don't like his style, don't appreciate it. But it's not just Freak. I'm talking generally. The casting for these two semi-finals, I'm not a commentator, but I've listened to a lot of commentary in my life. I thought it was appalling. Like, I thought some of it was really amateurish. Some of it was just bad. Like, I couldn't believe that they were putting these particular, like, sets on these games. Like, I don't know if the people came in with the wrong mindset, could have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. All these things can happen. I get it. But, like, I'm not going to just deny that or pretend like it's all cool when, like, we only get one Worlds, guys, and we don't have that lower bracket. These semi-finals, like, these were big, big games. Like, these, I sat down and watched these. Like, I would sit down and watch, like, the Super Bowl, mate. I was ready to be excited, entertained, and I thought there was a lot of, like, faux pas, slip-ups, just bad casting at times. I wanted to get your take on it. So there you go. See what? I throw hand grenades, mate. I throw hand grenades. You'll know I throw hand grenades. You know that.
So here's the thing. Now, you know that I always have believed that the casting should respond more dynamically to the teams that are playing, right? If you have two Chinese teams. Now, remember that we had guests from China. I was literally watching Lyric on some of the shoulder content, like the like post show or whatever, right? Or I figured it was in between maps or the post show, but I was watching him from the Shanghai studio. So literally you could have had Chinese casters in Shanghai casting the all LPL semifinal, which objectively, so by the way, I think the LPL casters did a very good job this year overall, especially considering their average kind of experience level. It's not a knock on them to say they're not as experienced as some of the other casters, so they're not going to deliver the same.
There's some talent there for sure.
Yeah, sure, but there's some good talent. I really like Lyric. I think he's done a really good job, and you know, I just wonder why we can't have experts from that region on the cast. I just wonder that, and it's always been true of Riot because the way that they do this is they basically just say, okay, these casters are going to be casting well in advance of before you even know the matches, which to me is like a wild way to do things that I would never do. Now, that aside, it was also interesting because we didn't see tri-casts, which have been a staple of the knockout stage of Worlds since like 2013 or 2014. And so I know that because they have to have all the casters from one region doing it, maybe that's why they didn't do it. But I felt like I was really wanting another voice, another color commentator in there. So that kind of, because I
didn't consider that.
Yeah, I've been trained by Riot to have TriCast be something special that you do for international tournaments. And because I've been listening to that for years, or I've been doing it myself, it did sort of lose the specialness to me, because that is one of the things that you really, I think, anticipate as a viewer for Worlds is the TriCast. And so even though you'd have to, use three casters from the same region because of delay, and like it wouldn't work just with the speed of light guys due to the ping between regions to reasonably cast a game like that. I was curious why they didn't make that decision.
I agree. They should have at least tried to cast. Oh, sorry, you meant a tri-cast. Shit, my bad. Whatever. Went off a little bit. By the way, I'll also just say, because people are going to assume it anyway in light of the way this year's gone. And by the way, like I said before, don't be afraid of Reddit. Like, those people don't exist to me anymore, so it's not a problem. We can say, do whatever we want. Listen, they're still welcome to be in the peanut gallery. Comment on things, just like if you go on the NFL subreddit, of course, comment. Get all your barbershop takes out. That's actually part of the fun of following sports. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't read it anymore. I don't want to have to take it personally. You guys say whatever the fuck you want, have whatever arguments you want. So the other thing about casters as well in this sense is, they also can't do anything to us, Monty. Like, we don't work in League of Legends in that way. No, don't get me wrong. They can throw a tantrum on Twitter. I saw that earlier this year with that whole Neon thing where they were in the wrong, but they tried to flip it and project it all onto me because I commented on them being in the wrong. So we all know that these people aren't necessarily the highest integrity. But I will say, this isn't about me and Frostgorin and the fact that because let's be real, if I was going to be super biased against her, I could have been biased against her where she essentially has publicly stated that she's just biased against people who were born in the same corporeal form as me. So I'd have better reasons to hate on her. I actually think, by the way, if she got her head together and she really reflects on the way the last couple of years ago, she could be the best caster in League of Legends. I've always championed her talent. A lot of people might not know this. After she made those utterly inane and asinine comments about the kinds of people who play League of Legends a few years ago when there was that famous incident at the PAX conference or whatever, I even did a tweet at the time. I've now deleted it because she's done some more harmful things since, where I basically just said, like, don't let basically like her personality make you ignore her talent. Like, this is someone who can add value to the game. They can bring something to the game. So I still believe that at its core. But the key thing I mentioned there is that it's like, you got to take it on the chin when you fuck up. If you know you did a bad job, if you know on some level you did, listen, I know that if you go and read the comments, a lot of them are going to be like very ineloquent. They're going to be so ignorant of how they state it. They're just going to say stupid stuff like, you're obviously just biased against, I don't know, fucking damn, whatever. I mean, in that case, it would be the other teams. You know, like they pick whatever games they want. But in that case, like that isn't, there was some real basis to the problems with these games. And so if you can just reflect on that, put aside the stuff that's just toxic, look at the real criticism. These people, some of them could be the best cast. They could have given us amazing games. Like I say, it wasn't just the people assigned to the game. I also think they came in and they just got pitched out if it was baseball, or they didn't hit a single fucking ball, did they? You know.
I don't know what was going on. I think like I generally expect more of both Frostgrin and Dracos, and it's like they were both off that day, so maybe you just get really unlucky. I know in the past, you know, when I've had bad casts, everybody does when you cast hundreds of games a year. I just tweet them like, hey, I missed that Baron, or like, you know, I had the famous like Sunfire stole Baron moment, which is like kind of a meme now. But like I'm just like, well, I fucked up. Like, you know, you can only do so many live hours of broadcast, because the whole thing, guys, is it's like you have to have your energy in the right place. And it's sort of, as a color commentator, like being given an oral exam on what is going on in the game, and you have to get it right. And if you don't get it right every fucking time for hundreds of games a year, then people shit on you. It's a very high stress job. Yes. So it's tough. Now, the other thing I think about the LEC as a whole is, even though I think personally that the LEC is probably the best production in esports overall, I really, really enjoy it. And I really enjoy what all the casters bring to it. Paradoxically, I actually think the casting is the worst part of LEC. And that's not saying it's bad. I'm just saying compared to everything else I enjoy about LEC,
I get what you mean.
It's the part I enjoy the least. And I think part of that is they've got a bunch of new casters over there, or they have people whose strengths have been doing on-camera analysis and are moving them into casting more heavily. So there are all these factors, I think, that came into play. And for the LCS guys, I mean, it just sounded... I appreciated the hype that the Kobe and Freakcast brought, and I certainly enjoyed it more. But yeah, I know the observing has been an issue too, because the observing has been really weird, and I don't know why exactly. It just doesn't seem like it's at the caliber that we expect. But, you know, there were ways to rectify this problem, because there's no law that says that the casters couldn't go to Shanghai. Remember? Like, that's not written anywhere. Usually the casters maybe do groups outside, and I know there wasn't enough time for them to do the 2-week quarantine this time, but that's just a choice that you make, and I get it in terms of cost and like not being able to move them after groups to get them there ahead of time. But, you know, they made this choice to have everybody split up, and I think you're dealing with the consequences of that, which is that unfortunately you can't have the tri-cast, you can't have the caster crossover, you can't have people working as closely together, because from my experience, one of the best parts about Worlds is getting everybody from all these different regions, and everyone's sitting down and reviewing tape together and sharing notes and really like getting into it. And these casters are all wonderful, that the ones I've worked with in the past are doing that. So, I mean, I think it was disappointing overall.
Oh, and by the way, to tie into what I said about like, just suck it up. Listen, I'll give credit to Dracos. Like, I saw he did a tweet where he essentially sort of owned part of it. Like, you know, he admitted like it wasn't a good day or something like that. But I will say he sort of threw a little excuse in at the end. That get out of jail free card doesn't exist, homie. Which is where he tried to imply that like the fact that there was like no live crowd was what threw him off. It's like, listen, suck it up, sweetheart. It's the semi-final of the World Championship. If you can't handle it without a live crowd, there are other people who can. And I say that as someone who, again, has been on camera. I did a CSGO major where I was in a totally different building to where the fucking whole thing was, and obviously I couldn't know what the crowds reacted. I've known commentators. We also had a CSGO major a few years after that, where Anders and Semler were casting from like the bowels of the fucking arena, and then all the crowd was like 2 floors up or something. Like, this has happened before. I get it. It's not perfect. But don't ever do that angle, by the way, where it's like, because there's some minor issues. Like, if that hadn't happened, it's like, that is unfortunately esports. Like, we're not at the stage yet where we have the perfect casting setup.
It's also
especially this
2020.
Year. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Also just like literally, dude, like, you've been in the same studio the entire time without a crowd, and so is everybody else. And at least you're in a studio in kind of an environment where you can get separated and get into it mentally and kind of get yourself amped up. People are having to do this from their fucking bedroom, dude. They like roll out of bed and like hop on the mic and are expected to hype it like there's a 10,000 person crowd. You just got to figure it out. Like, I don't know. It's not easy, but you've had, I don't know, 11 months.
When I first got into Counter-Strike, right, because it was the beginning of the 2000s, and it was the time where the first big international LANs came along. So you can imagine all the discussion among pro players was like, we're transitioning from being good online to the first LANs. So everything was about, can you handle it on LAN? And what used to be brilliant is all the European Counter-Strike players used to use this quote all the time, because obviously everyone would complain like that, like, no, but you know, when I was at home, like I was feeling better and I didn't feel so nervous. They would always just say this line that people will have heard many times, where it just said, excuses are like arseholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink. I just always remember that. Perfect, innit? Because we all have excuses, exactly. Just get over it, you know. Don't try to listen. Like I say, even if it's true, even if that really did throw you off, that's something for you to deal with. Just don't mention that. Like, it's not going to go down well with a lot of people, put it out with. It's going to sound like you're saying, but it's not my fault. Like, I know that's not quite what you said. Like I said, he phrased it in a very sort of like, he went one way, went the other way halfway through. But I just think this has to be a learning experience. That's why I don't want what I'm afraid might happen, which is people take, like I said, the very like ineloquent, quite ignorant version of saying like you did a bad cast, which is usually like you're just a bad person or something like, and then they ignore that and go, well, that's just all nonsense criticism. Like, no, there's a grain of truth there. Come on.
I think that it really was everything kind of going wrong at the same time, and I don't anticipate that we're gonna have it happen again. But I do agree that it is disappointing that it happened on that one. And I think part of it was the series too. Like, if you've been hyped up and you're a European caster, you do have some level of bias. Obviously, everyone has some level of bias. And it probably was really disappointing to see G2 getting absolutely curb stomped like that. It certainly wasn't the semifinal that I wanted to see either. And I felt kind of deflated while watching it personally. So I kind of get it if you're really emotionally invested in this team, and to see them, it's just a bummer because last year they got choked out in the finals, and this year they got choked out in the semis. And it just seems like when they hit one of these really strong opponents, they really just don't have a like they can't fight. It's over. It feels like almost. But we'll get into that.